The engine died with a mechanical sigh that seemed to echo across the empty Nevada desert. Steve McQueen sat motionless on his Triumph Bonneville, the sudden silence more unsettling than any roar. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the landscape in shades of amber and rust. He'd been riding for hours, letting the speed wash away the pressures of Hollywood, the endless meetings, the scripts that all blurred together. But now, 20 miles outside Las Vegas, his escape had become his prison. He tried the starter. Nothing, not even a sputter. McQueen climbed off the bike and looked around. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by the thin ribbon of asphalt beneath his feet and a cluster of buildings in the distance that barely qualified as a town. Heat waves shimmered upward from the road, distorting the air like water. His leather jacket, perfect for the ride, now felt like a furnace. He began pushing the bike toward the buildings, the weight of it making every step deliberate and slow. The town, if you could call it that, consisted of maybe a dozen structures scattered along a single street. A diner with a flickering neon sign, a gas station that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1940s, a few houses with yards full of sun-bleached cars and pickup trucks. An old man was sitting on the porch of what appeared to be a general store, a dog sleeping at his feet. McQueen approached, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Excuse me," McQueen called out. "You know if there's a mechanic around here?" The old man looked up from his newspaper, squinting against the sun. His face was weathered like old leather, deeply lined and permanently darkened by decades of desert sun. He studied McQueen for a moment, taking in the expensive leather jacket, the perfectly styled hair, the sunglasses that probably cost more than most people made in a week. "You're that actor fellow, ain't you?" the old man said. "From the car movies." McQueen nodded, not particularly surprised. Fame had a way of reaching even the most remote places. The old man gestured down the street. "There's a shop 2 blocks that way. Red building, can't miss it." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But I gotta warn you, son. The fella who runs it, he's a bit off. Been through some things. Might not be what you're expecting." "Off how?" McQueen asked. The old man shook his head. "Just be patient with him. That's all I'm saying." McQueen thanked him and continued pushing his bike down the dusty street. The warning stuck with him, creating an itch of anxiety in his chest. What did "off" mean exactly? Dangerous? Unstable? He'd dealt with difficult people before, but out here, isolated and dependent on a stranger's help, the dynamic felt different. The red building was exactly where the old man had said it would be. It was a simple structure, maybe 30 feet wide, with large garage doors and a hand-painted sign that read "Repairs" in faded white letters. The exterior was weathered and sun-beaten, paint peeling in long strips, but there was something about the place that didn't quite match its rundown appearance. The driveway was spotless. No oil stains, no scattered parts, no debris. Even the weeds growing around the foundation seemed somehow organized. McQueen pushed his bike up to the open garage door and peered inside. The interior was a revelation. Every tool had its place. Workbenches were organized with military precision. Parts were sorted, labeled, stored in perfect rows. The concrete floor was clean enough to eat off. This wasn't the shop of a crazy man. This was the domain of someone who understood order in a way that went beyond mere preference. "Can I help you?" McQueen turned toward the voice and saw a man emerging from the shadows at the back of the shop. He was probably in his 50s, medium height, with graying hair and arms that showed the kind of lean strength that comes from decades of physical work. But it was his eyes that caught McQueen's attention. They were sharp, alert, constantly moving as if scanning for threats that existed only in his memory. "My bike broke down," McQueen said, gesturing toward the Triumph. "Won't start. I was hoping you could take a look." The man approached cautiously, his movements precise but guarded. "What's your name?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Steve McQueen." The mechanic nodded slowly. Figured as much. Saw Bullet last year. Hell of a car chase. He extended a hand. Name's Frank. Frank Kowalski. They shook hands, and McQueen noticed the calluses, the small scars, the way Frank's grip was firm but not aggressive. These were working hands. Honest hands. "Let's see what we got here," Frank said, turning his attention to the motorcycle. He began his examination with the kind of thoroughness that spoke of genuine expertise. Not the hurried diagnostic of someone trying to impress a celebrity, but the methodical approach of a craftsman who took pride in his work. He checked the spark plugs, tested the electrical connections, examined the fuel line. His movements were economical, precise, almost choreographed. "When did you last have the carburetor cleaned?" Frank asked without looking up. Honestly, I'm not sure," McQueen admitted. "I usually just take it to the dealer." Frank made a non-committal sound and continued his work. After a few minutes, he straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days. "It's your fuel system," he said. "Carburetor's gummed up, fuel filter's clogged. Probably been building up for weeks. You ride it hard?" McQueen nodded. "Pretty much every chance I get." "Nothing wrong with that. Bikes are meant to be ridden, but they're also meant to be maintained." Frank's tone wasn't judgmental, just matter-of-fact. "This'll take me about an hour. You want some coffee while you wait? I got a pot going in the back." The offer surprised McQueen. The old man's warning had prepared him for someone unstable, difficult, but Frank seemed perfectly reasonable, just quiet and methodical. They walked to the back of the shop where a small office space had been carved out. It was as organized as the rest of the garage, but personal touches revealed themselves in the details. A photograph of a young man in military uniform sat on the desk. A Purple Heart was mounted on the wall next to what appeared to be a bronze star. Books about motorcycle repair were stacked neatly on a shelf next to volumes on military history. Frank poured coffee from a percolator that looked like it belonged in a 1940s kitchen. The coffee was strong, bitter, the kind that could wake the dead. "You served?" McQueen asked, nodding toward the medals. Frank's hands paused for just a moment, the coffee cup halfway to his lips. "Yeah, long time ago." "Where?" "Europe, 82nd Airborne." Frank took a sip of coffee, his eyes growing distant. "Normandy, Market Garden, Battle of the Bulge, the whole tour." McQueen felt something shift in the room, a gravity he hadn't expected. He'd met plenty of veterans in Hollywood, guys who'd done their service and come back to normal lives. But there was something different about Frank, something in the way he held himself, the way his eyes never quite stopped scanning. "That must have been," McQueen began, then stopped, realizing how inadequate any response would be. "It was what it was," Frank said simply. "We did what we had to do." Frank returned to work on the motorcycle, and McQueen found himself studying the man more carefully. The precision in his movements, the way he organized his tools, the almost ritualistic approach to each task, it all made sense now. This wasn't just craftsmanship. This was survival behavior adapted to civilian life. "You know," Frank said as he cleaned the carburetor, "I saw The Great Escape when it came out. Good picture. You do your own motorcycle riding in that one?" "Most of it," McQueen replied. "Had to use a stunt double for the fence jump at the end. Studio insurance wouldn't let me do it." Frank smiled, the first genuine expression McQueen had seen from him. "Probably smart. I've seen what happens when you hit a fence at speed. It's not pretty. You speak from experience. Different kind of fence, different kind of consequences." Frank's smile faded, but he continued working. "We used to say in the war, there's no such thing as a small mistake when people are shooting at you. Everything matters. Every detail, every precaution, every backup plan." McQueen watched as Frank reassembled the carburetor with movements that were almost meditative in their precision. Each part was cleaned, inspected, and placed exactly where it belonged. No wasted motion, no hesitation. "Is that why people think you're—" McQueen caught himself before finishing the sentence. Crazy? Frank supplied without looking up. Yeah, probably. I know what they say in town. The war messed me up, made me paranoid, made me weird. He shrugged. Maybe they're right. Maybe spending 3 years watching friends die does something to a person that doesn't just go away. The honesty was startling in its directness. McQueen had expected deflection, anger, or denial. Instead, Frank was simply stating facts. But here's the thing, Frank continued, installing a new fuel filter with the same methodical care. The habits that kept me alive over there, they serve me pretty well over here too. Pay attention to details. Maintain your equipment. Don't trust anything to luck that you can control with preparation. Frank started the motorcycle. The engine turned over immediately, settling into a smooth, powerful idle that sounded healthier than it had in months. There you go, Frank said, wiping his hands. Should run like new now. But do yourself a favor. Get the maintenance done regularly. A machine is only as good as the care you put into it. McQueen reached for his wallet. What do I owe you? $25, Frank said. McQueen pulled out 2 20s and held them out. Keep the change. Frank looked at the money for a moment, then back at McQueen. You sure about that? Absolutely. You saved my day and probably my reputation. Can't have Steve McQueen getting rescued from a broken-down bike, right? Frank accepted the money with a slight nod. Appreciate it. As McQueen prepared to leave, Frank walked him to the garage door. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the desert floor. Mr. McQueen, Frank said as McQueen climbed onto his bike. Can I ask you something? Sure. In your movies, you play a lot of tough guys. Heroes, rebels, guys who don't back down from a fight. That just acting, or is that really you? McQueen considered the question. A few hours ago, he might have answered with his usual cocky confidence, but something about Frank's directness, his unvarnished honesty, made casual boasting seem inadequate. I don't know, McQueen said finally. I've never really been tested, not like you have. Frank nodded slowly. Most people haven't. That's not a bad thing. Just remember, being tough isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you're afraid. McQueen started the bike, feeling the smooth power that Frank had restored. The engine hummed with perfect precision, every component working in harmony. Thank you, McQueen said, not just for the bike, for the conversation. Frank stepped back and raised his hand in a small wave. Ride safe, Mr. McQueen, and remember what I said about maintenance. McQueen rode back toward Las Vegas as the sun touched the horizon, but his mind wasn't on the spectacular desert sunset or the smooth performance of his repaired motorcycle. He was thinking about Frank Kowalski, about the assumptions he'd made, about the gap between reputation and reality. The old man on the porch had warned him that Frank was off, and McQueen had prepared himself for someone unstable, possibly dangerous. Instead, he'd met a man who was more grounded, more genuinely heroic than anyone he'd encountered in Hollywood. Frank's precision wasn't compulsion. It was craftsmanship elevated to an art form. His vigilance wasn't paranoia. It was the learned behavior of someone who understood that details matter, that preparation saves lives, that respect is earned through competence and integrity. McQueen realized that in his world of manufactured drama and artificial conflict, he'd lost touch with what real toughness looked like. It wasn't about leather jackets and dangerous stunts and cool attitudes. It was about doing your job well, helping people when they needed it, and carrying your burdens without making them everyone else's problem. The motorcycle purred beneath him, running better than it had in months, a testament to Frank's skill and dedication. But more than that, it was a reminder of a lesson McQueen knew he needed to remember. The real heroes weren't always the ones with their names on movie theater marquees. Have you ever discovered someone's hidden story that completely changed how you saw them?